Chapter 3. The Hat and the Superglue. Look at that. Matilda using a cane to tip the hat off of the stand, the little hat hook. Let's see what she's up to. The following morning, just before the father left for his beastly second-hand car garage, Matilda slipped into the cloakroom and got hold of the hat he wore each day to work. She had to stand on her toes and reach up as high as she could with a walking stick in order to hook the hat off the peg, and even then she only just made it. Because remember, she's real tiny, and she's small, and she's young. The hat itself was one of those flat-topped pork pie jobs with a jay's feather stuck in the hat band, and Mr. Wormwood was very proud of it. He thought it gave him a rakish, daring look, especially when he wore it at an angle with his loud checked jacket and green tie. What Roald Dahl here is describing is something like a very loud way of dressing, like a very pulling attention to yourself. And I think we're supposed to understand that Mr. Wormwood thinks he looks really great, so he wants that attention. But we know he looks kind of gaudy and uncool. Matilda, holding the hat in one hand and a thin tube of superglue in the other, proceeded to squeeze a line of glue very neatly all around the inside rim of the hat. Then she carefully hooked the hat back onto the peg with the walking stick. She timed this operation very carefully, applying the glue just as her father was getting up from the breakfast table. Mr. Wormwood didn't notice anything when he put the hat on, but when he arrived at the garage, he couldn't get it off. Superglue is very powerful stuff. So powerful it will take your skin off if you pull too hard. Mr. Wormwood didn't want to be scalped, which means that your scalp would come off. So he had to keep the hat on his head the whole day long, even when putting sawdust in the gearboxes and fiddling the mileages of cars with his electric drill. In an effort to save face, he adopted a casual attitude, hoping that his staff would think he actually meant to keep his hat on all day long just for the heck of it, like gangsters do in the films. When you save face, that means you don't allow yourself to be embarrassed in front of other people. So sometimes if you do something embarrassing, but you don't want anyone to catch you doing that embarrassing thing, you play it off like it was on purpose, or you just sit quietly until the embarrassing moment is over. When he got home that evening, he still couldn't get the hat off. "Don't be silly," his wife said. "Come here. I'll take it off for you." She gave the hat a sharp yank. Mr. Wormwood let out a yell that rattled the window panes. "Ow, ow, ow!" he screamed. "Don't do that. Let go. You'll take half the skin off my forehead." Here's the scene. Matilda, nestling in her usual chair, was watching this performance over the rim of her book with some interest. "What's the matter, Daddy?" she said. "Has your head suddenly swollen or something?" The father glared at his daughter with deep suspicion, but said nothing. How could he? Mrs. Wormwood said to him, "It must be superglue. It couldn't be anything else. That'll teach you to go around playing with nasty stuff like that. I expect you were trying to stick another feather in your hat." "I haven't touched the flaming stuff," Mr. Wormwood shouted. He turned and looked again at Matilda, who looked back at him with large, innocent brown eyes. Mrs. Wormwood said to him, "You should read the label on the tube before you start messing with dangerous products. Always follow the instructions on the label." "What are you talking about?" He said something very mean. "I'm not going to say it because it's too mean." He calls his wife a witch. It's not nice. He's shouting at her, and he clutches the brim of his hat to stop anyone trying to pull it off again. "Do you think I'm so stupid I'd put glue on this thing? I'd glue this thing to my head on purpose?" And here's Matilda, rim of the book, checking out the scene, but not really contributing much because it's better to stay quiet. Matilda said, "There's a boy down the road." Oh, I take that back. She's about to say something. Matilda said, "There's a boy down the road who got some superglue on his finger without knowing it, and then he put his finger to his nose." Mr. Wormwood jumped. "What happened to him?" he spluttered. "The finger got stuck inside his nose," Matilda said, "and he had to go around like that for a week. People kept saying to him, 'Stop picking your nose.' And he couldn't do anything about it. He looked an awful fool." "Serve him right," Mrs. Wormwood said. "He shouldn't have put his finger up there in the first place. It's a nasty habit. If all children had superglue put on their fingers, they'd soon stop doing it." Matilda said, "Grown-ups do it too, Mummy. I saw you doing it yesterday in the kitchen." "That's quite enough from you," Mrs. Wormwood said, turning pink. Mr. Wormwood had to keep his hat on all through supper in front of the television. He looked ridiculous, and he stayed very silent. When he went up to bed, he tried again to get the thing off, and so did his wife, but it wouldn't budge. "How am I going to have my shower?" he demanded. You'll just have to do without it, won't you?" his wife told him. And later on, as she watched her skinny little husband skulking around the bedroom in his purple striped pajamas with a pork pie hat on his head, she thought about how, sorry to use the word, but this is what it says, stupid he looked. Hardly the kind of a man a wife dreams about, she told herself. And then Mr. Wormwood discovered that the worst thing about having a permanent hat on his head was having to sleep in it. It was impossible to lie comfortably on the pillow. "Now do stop fussing around," his wife said to him after he had been tossing and turning for about an hour. "I expect it will be loose by the morning, and then it'll slip off easily." But it wasn't loose by the morning, and it wouldn't slip off. So Mrs. Wormwood took a pair of scissors and cut the thing off his head, bit by bit, first the top and then the brim. The brim of the hat is the part that comes out from like the base, like the body of the hat. Where the inner band had stuck to the hair all around the sides and back, she had to chop the hair right off to the skin so that he finished up with a bald white ring around his head, like some sort of a monk. And in the front, where the band had stuck directly to the bare skin, there remained a whole lot of small patches of brown leathery stuff that no amount of washing could get off. At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though you've got little brown insects crawling around all over you. People will think you've got lice." "Be quiet," the father snapped. "Just keep your nasty little mouth shut, will you?" Not nice at all. All in all, it was a most satisfactory exercise for Matilda, but it was surely too much to hope that it had taught the father a permanent lesson. And I want to draw your attention to one thing in this chapter that becomes more clear as we read the book. Roald Dahl refers to the parents as the father. The father. Not Matilda's father, not her father. It's just a character in Matilda's story. We're used to seeing parents who are deeply engaged with kids. We're used to seeing parents that care deeply for their children. As readers, we should be suspect of these people. We should be suspicious, not their actions are suspect. They are suspicious people because they don't care about Matilda. They're so interested only in what works for them that Roald Dahl is helping us to kind of like separate Matilda from the family by referring to the parents as the father, the mother. Just a little tip. That's all. See you again for chapter 4.